In this section, we will look at organizations and the impact of adopting customized employment had on our service provider partners. When we decided to adopt the customized employment service delivery model, it was new to both CLBC and the ministry. It would also be new to service providers. As a result of this, we looked for service providers through the RFP process, but we looked for service providers who were willing to work with us to meet our objectives, share results, lessons learned, and best practice. We looked for organizations that demonstrated a commitment to individualized services and those that would be prepared to adopt and work with concepts of customized employment. We recognized early that this may include additional staff training, dedicated staff resources, and a change in operations for many of the organizations. The partners we sought were committed to changing attitudes and developing a culture of change. We looked to see that this was evidenced in the way that they had previously approached service delivery. Our service providers agreed to mentor their staff and others to build internal and community capacity. And importantly, we looked for those service providers who already had strong connections to their community and employers, as we recognized early that this community connections and these relationships were absolutely important to the success of customized employment and developing those natural supports that were so essential. Our service provider partners had different levels of experience. Some had been solely employment service providers, while others provided a wide range of community inclusion and support services, which may or may not have included employment services. We recognized that customized employment would require multi-skilled employees, and new skills such as marketing and how to connect with employers. A better understanding of job coaching and systematic instruction would be required. This in an environment where many organizations were already experiencing some difficulties in attracting and retaining qualified staff. Customized employment is delivered in community. For some, this meant changing working conditions. For example, not all jobs were in the 9-to-5 period. This required new working hours and some flexibility with staff willing to undertake evening and weekend work. This often conflicted with the old concept of 9-to-5 office hours. Some organizations were building the capacity to deliver customized employment within a structure that provided many services. This meant balancing service priorities and shifting the organization's resources. This may have presented the largest challenge in those organizations who traditionally also provided day services. Employment may not be full-time, and there was a fear and challenge on balancing other services around employment. When we launched this project, we asked what would make the organization successful. To no one's surprise, the following concepts were offered. Commitment to the project, both to partners and individuals served. Open and transparent to all stakeholders. We were asking organizations to be innovative, to try something different, use a new model, and put their stamp on it. This required responsiveness and flexibility. CE required organizations to look outside the box, outside of their comfort zones, and respond to partners and clients. We wanted to document our results, where we were achieving employment outcomes with the necessary supports, and in particular, transitioning to these natural supports. How were we doing? How long was it taking? We recognized early that customized employment is very much about creating and maintaining relationships. Relationships with staff, clients, families, community, and business partners. Without these, the organization could not succeed. Organizations had a philosophy that supported the belief that everyone can work. This supported the underlying principles of customized employment that builds on the unique strengths and talents of each individual. Jobs are of mutual benefit to the individual and the employer, and natural supports can be created in the workplace. We looked for organizations that had commitment to these concepts and philosophy right at the top. We looked for support from board of directors and the CEO. Organizations agreed that all staff were to be engaged in talking and thinking employment. employment should be discussed at all possible opportunities. Organizations recognized they needed a plan to start and deliver customized employment services. And importantly, they recognized early that one person cannot affect change in their organization. You need a leader, but others must be part of the process. Here's a summary of the best practices that have been passed on to us from our partners who have been delivering customized employment services. Create a dedicated team. Hire for different skills. Use a team approach. One person cannot do it all. We recognize that new skills are required. This required training. This requires an organization to invest in their staff. Customized employment is best done in a concentrated effort, not an hour a week for multiple weeks, but rather fewer job seekers over a shorter time frame to job placement. Our best guess is that 5 to 6 active job seekers per staff member at any one time works the best. If possible, 2 to 3 dedicated employment specialists works well for an organization. This provides opportunity to share ideas and to back up each other for individuals. It is absolutely essential that we include family in the support network in the process right from the start. Engage early and often. And importantly, we heard, take time to develop your own policies, procedures. Follow all of these. Take no shortcuts. If done well and followed all the way through, customized employment works well and will find the right match. After a few years of providing customized employment services, the organizational impact is that most feel they now have a stronger presence in the community. This from developing relationships with the business community. That discovery is a valuable tool, but it can be used not only for employment services, for other services. The organizations now have new skills. Their staff are well trained with a broader range of experiences. And for many, they now have a very focused employment team. We will now hear from Barb Gertson from Delta Community Living Society on some of their observations in adopting customized employment.
Thanks, Janet. There was a lot of change in our organization because we didn't have a formal employment structure in the organization. We supported a more traditional kind of supported employment services within the day service structure. So things like enclaves and work crews and community employment that involved small groups of people going to work for a particular business, but not hired by the business. So they didn't have that formal employer-employee relationship and often were contracted with DCLS to provide the particular service or program. So really for us, it was a paradigm shift in the organization when we approached the customized employment model that had a very highly individualized process, one person, one employer, one business, one person at a time. And so in making that shift in the organization, we made a commitment right in the beginning, and the DCLS management team made a commitment to hire staff and a staff team who shared common values and beliefs about the capacity of people with disabilities, their ability to make a contribution to working in their community. They made a commitment to hire a highly effective team that had a range of skill sets. So we came from different backgrounds. We came from different employment histories, and that we brought a range of strengths and talents to the table.
Can you just tell me more about what those backgrounds were?
We started with a staff team of 3 two of us were currently employed with Delta Community Living Society. One person was hired from externally from working in another field. The person that came from EPPD programs and had a wide range of experience working with people with different backgrounds, multiple barriers, different employment support needs.
Right.
And one of the staff had run her own business, had written a business plan, had a good understanding of, from an employer's perspective, what some of those considerations would be in terms of operating a business that was cost effective, that was viable, that could be successful. So she brought that unique skill set to the table. And I had worked specifically in employment services in a small community and understood some of the challenges that were necessary in creating employment opportunities for people in a rural and small community. So we brought those different experiences with us.
Were there other changes within the organization, just philosophically, location-wise, those sorts of things? Maybe talk a little bit about those.
Before we even started to address those, our identity and how we wanted to be perceived in the community, we started with a 3-phase, 12-week work plan. And in that work plan, we looked at a research and development component. So we had an opportunity to go out and observe other employment models in other agencies and some other partners that were providing employment services. So that gave us a really good understanding of the range of options that were in other communities and that people were engaging in, and provided us with a clear definition of CE services and how they were different from the other services in that continuum. And that was so valuable for us to have taken that time, because essentially that did define who we were, who would we be serving, and the services that we would be providing. We also looked at different models, and from that, it allowed us to determine what model would be the most effective for delivering the CE services. And what we had decided is that there would be a team approach to case management, and that we would use a concentrated caseload of 5 or 6 people at a time. And we used one staff person as a key connection. So that person would see the process through and built that continuity of relationships from the start to the finish through the whole CE process.
What about documentation?
That was a really important part of that early research and development, and that accountability. Those accountability measures were established early in the process so that we had a system to capture and track the CE services components and the outcomes, because we had a lot to prove to a lot of different people, both internally within our own organization and externally to our own communities and the business community. So that designed an extensive data collection reporting system and to track the components and outcomes, and went on to develop an employer database to maintain all of our employer contacts for the whole organization. So it really had a positive spin-off in that all of the day services that were impacted by the employment first culture now had that new tool and resource to access, and that we were very careful about how we presented ourselves to community and how we took our time in establishing our identity so that when we went to community, that we could establish our credibility be very clear about who we were and what we could do and what we could offer.
So let me go back to some of the organizational things. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is about support from the top. You know, we always talk about boards of directors and that sort of thing. So can you add some insight or some clarity to, from an organizational point of view, what support from the top means? I'm presuming it was here to make the program successful, but just even a little bit about what that meant to you, or how it existed.
Fortunately, Delta Community Living Society had a lot of existing partnerships in community, and we were able to use those partnerships and community connections to help evolve the CE initiative and approach. And one that stands out in my mind is the connection with Delta School Board and the Partnership School Pathways program. So that was a very strong influence on how we worked and connected with youth in our community. We experienced a commitment and support at the upper management level, who really gave us the mandate to create our identity. They gave us the support to take the kinds of risks that we did. And some of those risks were taking the time to do our planning and development and to develop all the resources that we would need to support the process. And so even when there was pressure for us to start delivering the service, our management team let CLBC and other parties know that we weren't ready, that we were in the process of developing our standards, our policies, our procedures, trying to identify what would capture the best practices and how we should go about doing that. So we were very fortunate in having that initial support.
Would you have done anything differently?
You know, we faced the same day-to-day challenges that many of the CE services experienced. Sometimes that was, working with families that were uncertain about the capacity of their son or daughter to work, to have a job and to work independently. I think in the early stages, we wished we would have spent more time with Community Living BC to help them understand the differences in the model and who best would be served under this model, because it's resource intensive.
Or what did they have to shift? Do you know what I mean? Like what would they, different thinking, because we've always said, you know, you have to think a little bit differently. And I'm just curious about the noticeable changes in staff or how they approach jobs. So maybe let's talk about the impact of having the customized employment service. Let's talk about the impact of that service maybe on DCLS as an organization, or its service delivery philosophy, or just the impact generally. Can you see a shift there?
Absolutely. The customized employment services that we've established at DCLS have infiltrated and impacted the culture of the organization. And it's done that by working with a number of people who had never had an opportunity to work successfully and independently in their community, who have been served at Delta Community Living Society over many years, and some people that would have been considered unemployable or who would need ongoing supports. And the customized process allowed us to find the right path, the right the right opportunity and the right environment for those people. I think as each success was established and we shared those stories internally, and the staff and families and service providers in the organization began to see that it could work and that it did change lives and people could have their own employment and their own identity and community. So I think it's had a significant impact. It's also allowed us to share some of those best practices with the day services, and all of the day services are now engaging in discovery. And all of the resources that we developed for discovery and exploring people's interests are being used in day services. So a lot of those resources have been spread throughout the organization and are being used. And some of the staff have said they've been here for 10 years and we had no idea that they liked a particular kind of work or activity or hobby. So it's helped staff move beyond that traditional surface understanding of who a person is and moves them into discovering passions and unique talents.
As part of undertaking this project, we looked at resources that may be of interest and of use to organizations wishing to deliver customized employment services. While we have listed a long list of resources available, I would like to draw your attention to a couple of resources that were developed specifically for organizations and how to evolve their employment services. These resources focused on transforming the organization, building organizational capacity, and some of the tools and resources to do this. These are summarized on the following pages. I would encourage you to seek them out and read them. They're excellent resources.